You face forward, or you face the possibility of shock and damage.
We good. I used this to record something else recently, I feel, and thought maybe my levels were adjusted. But we are all good.
We are here and we are ready to rumble.
Yeah, man. Oh, I should mention right off the top, by the way, that brand new music. I didn't. We've been using it now for an entire episode because it was used last episode. But I didn't mention anything about it because I just threw it in after I'd produced everything. But that brand new music. That's from Ryan, who you just interviewed on our last episode from Off the Record. So thanks to Ryan. It sounds so good. It makes us sound way more legit than we actually are.
Yeah, right on, Ryan. Keep it coming.
If I've come to any conclusion with that music, it's that it makes us sound way more legit than we could ever possibly be. So
it is interesting though how something that simple can make that big of a difference. Yeah. Whether it's on a podcast or like, a TV show intro or whatever, right? It doesn't even have to be that good. Think of Law and Order, that dun dun or whatever. But it's...
Wait, did you just compare our theme music, our new theme music, to the theme music from Law and Order?
That was the one reference I gave to Ryan. I said, watch Law and Order. That's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Please remake that, but a more like amped up version.
What would it sound like if somebody was getting murdered to punk music? That's what I want.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I don't know. Just go watch Sid and Nancy.
Yeah. All right. That's maybe not the best point to start off on.
Happy 2020.
Yeah, we made it.
Yeah, we did make it. This is our second episode back. Of course, it's our first one actually recording in this new... Okay, so here's the thing. I was going to say this new decade, but that seems to be a statement that people either fully embrace, that yes, it's a new decade, or like get unnecessarily annoyed by that phrase because then they go, well, a decade is 1 to 10, so it should be 2011 to 2020. Like, yeah, but no one refers to the 1920s as 1921 to 1930, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's a new decade. People just need to shut their mouths. But we of course had Christmas holidays and stuff, and that just meant we weren't recording for a little bit. But we're back now, and dare I say, better than ever.
Well, I sure hope so.
It's all up to you.
I've got so many resolutions I've got going on. I'm already better than before I began.
That's good.
The only resolution is watch more Law and Order.
Bum, bum, ba, 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 da, ba.
Yeah, there we
fair.
go. Yeah.
That's a good resolution. I think you should be able to keep that. What is it, NBC or whatever? I'm sure it's on. Is it even on TV anymore? It's got to be. Oh, it's
I don't know. I've never actually watched the show. Sorry.
Oh, really? I mean, it's
well, I have. But.
Sorry to the people who created Law and Order that I've never watched your show. Your work is a waste now.
I'm all about CSI Miami.
You just like the...
No, I'm just kidding.
Is it CSI Miami with...
that crusty dude, always Horatio or whatever.
I was trying to think of, what's his name, where he puts the sunglasses on.
Yeah, Horatio, or is that his name? Or
I feel like his first name is David, actually.
Oh.
David Caruso? Is that who that is? I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up. I'm going to look it up, though, because that's... But I don't know if it was CSI Miami or if it was just CSI. Where was the first CSI? Because they made so many of them, right?
Yeah.
CSI cast. I'm looking it up. Okay, so that's the original CSI. I don't think it was... I think the guy I'm thinking of was CSI Miami.
Yeah, it definitely
Miami
is.
Cast. And David Caruso. Nailed it.
There you go.
Where he
slays an alligator and then takes his sunglasses off and says, mystery solved.
I was going to say, he's got to make a horrible pun. That's what his thing is. Like I feel like David Caruso, while at least his character in CSI Miami might just be like the ultimate dad joke guy, You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like every one of his like statements before he'd put the sunglasses on to, further drive the point home was just a really bad dad joke. In relation
it's like
to the
dark dad jokes because he's around
Yes.
dead people all day. So
yes,
the kind of dad joke you're like, is this guy okay? Can we trust him with his children or our children? Or
he's very dark dad jokes. It's true. It's true. Oh man, that's too good. But yeah. All the CSI Miami talk out of the way. We are back. We're ready to keep rolling going forward with 2020. Hopefully bigger and better things. I'm not. Never mind. I was going to say something. I decided not to. It's fine. It's all good. I think we got to get down to business unless you have.
Yeah, let's do it. I got to get out of this murder mystery funk here.
Well, I was just saying, did you have any stories of that happen? Anything happen over Christmas?
I got this hilarious story of actually just heard it yesterday. I won't say
you killed a guy.
Well,
this hilarious story about this time I killed a guy.
I won't say who it is or where he's from, but he was saying how he's got these little dogs or whatever. And he was lying in bed, and this dog was licking his ear, and he just let it do its thing or whatever. And he wakes up the next day with an earache, and he was like, "Well, dogs aren't known to be the cleanest animals."
Yeah,
I was like, "How nasty is that?" Like,
yeah,
just this little dog just
licking
in your ear, like, "Oh, that's nice, little guy." And then you wake up the next day with an earache. Oh man, I could barely hold it together, like, because he was kind of being serious about it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah, animals. I'm always we have a couple cats. I've had dogs growing up and stuff, but I'm always just like a little bit grossed out by them because I'm like, some people like having their animals like sleeping with them in their bed or like sharing ice cream cones with them. I was like, I can't.
I don't even do that with my children.
Yeah, well, and my children don't lick their own butts. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like that's where it's like gets weird. I'm like, I know why the dog gave your buddy an ear infection because he licks his own ass. Like, let's be honest. What did he transfer into your buddy's ear? It is the way it is. Oh man. Oh.
A story that's completely irrelevant to my life or anything, but that's
that's fair. That's a funny story.
Too
that's
funny
story
to share. So.
I was, when we were like kind of figuring out scheduling when we were going to record this next episode, I was like hesitant to book because I had a toothache. So I was like, you're like first asked me, are we recording this week or next week? And like when you asked me, I was like going through life living with a toothache. And I was like, I got to go to the dentist. And I wasn't sure like when that was going to happen or if I went to the dentist when like any. So anyway, I got to go to the dentist on Friday. That was fun. It's been a little, I'll say I'm one of those guys where they're like, okay, so when was the last time you were at the dentist? I'm like,
like 5 minutes ago when I checked in.
Yeah. What do you mean? I'm right here, right now. What does it matter what happened in my past? Let's live in the now.
Yeah,
I have a toothache now. Let's fix it. Let's not judge me. But yeah, and they're like, who was your last dentist? And I'm like, grr. Because we've moved, So I'm like,
my father who pulled my teeth when they were loose.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're like the last dentist I went to was just kind of like a one-off sort of thing because then we ended up moving and I never went back, right? So I was like, well, I don't know, but so that was fun. I was thinking about it when I was like, I got this toothache and I'm thinking about it. I'm going to have to go get something done. I hate the dentist as any logical human being does. And I was like, well, I wonder if it would be any better if I was like, can I like listen to music or something while this is happening? And then I was like, if I do I then automatically every time I listen to that album or whatever, just think about the time I was in the dentist chair? So I was like, maybe we won't. We'll just leave it. But
so
I survived.
Yeah,
the toothache is no longer. And they were sly. They were like, all right, we're going to book you in for a cleaning. I was like, while I'm here, I can't say no. So now I got another dentist appointment in a couple weeks. That was my 2020 resolution was get my toothache fixed.
Yeah.
Because which is fair, because I think it started on like the 29th. It was like we were driving home from where we went and visited family for Christmas. So we were driving home when it kind of started aching. So I was like, yeah, it was my New Year's resolution. Get that toothache fixed. Cross that one off the list. We are good to go. This might be the first year I actually accomplished my New Year's resolution. So hooray for me.
Yeah, good way to start. I got another random story. Last night I I went to check the mail later in the evening, and I opened the front door, and there's like a bunch of toys, like up against our front door that I guess, I don't know, some random person dropped them off or who knows. And so I was just like, man, we just got so much stuff in the house from Christmas.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to leave it, close the door, forget about it. And then this morning, our kids were having a rough start to the morning. And then they found the toys, and they were so excited, and it made their day. And so just kind of like, and it was things they, like, there was this horse and this electric, like, remote control car and a lamp.
Yeah.
All things that, like, our kids kind of like. So I don't know who.
Maybe
Maybe Santa came late, I guess, and he's like, "Oh, here's some used toys."
I like that you said. So let me get this right. You said a horse, a remote control car, and a lamp. All things that your kids like. So one of your children is Steve Carell from Anchorman. Was it Anchorman? He's like, I love lamp. It's classic. Anyway, we're not here to talk about any of that stuff. We're here to talk about a little band that got their name from a Green Day song. That's the worst thing about this band.
Did they actually?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was like, because they were
Let's say
around.
the worst thing about this band is when you try to Google them, the first thing that
Right.
comes up is the Green Day song.
Right. Yeah.
But we're talking about a band called Good Riddance.
Always punk.
Always punk. And so with this, so we kind of mentioned in our last episode, like our best of 2019 episode, that we were going to change things up a little bit. In the past, we kind of basically done episodes where we talked about entire discographies. It mostly kind of would always end up focusing on just a couple of albums, because
Right.
some of these bands have been going for like 30 years or more, right? Like that we're talking about. They have extensive libraries, so it's hard to kind of go through all that stuff unless you've been following them for a long time. But so we decided what we're going to do going forward is pick a band and then pick we're each going to pick an album from their library. We'll come back and we'll talk about those albums. However, I say that knowing full well that at the end of this episode, when we announce who's next, we've already thrown that out the window. We're doing something a little bit different. So it is what it is. But for this episode, we've each chosen a Good Riddance album. And so we're going to talk about them. And as you'll notice, we'll kind of highlight a couple different songs here and there and sort of go from there. We're going to see how this goes. But first and foremost, the question that we ask each and every time is, how did you find out about Good Riddance?
Yeah, I can't even really pinpoint when it was. I don't know if it was a Fat Records comp first or if it was the album Ballads of the Revolution. I don't know who gave it to me or where I came across it. Actually, now that I say that, the two guys that I started playing music with in the town I grew up in Dauphin, they were both huge Good Riddance fans, so I'm guessing that's where I got it from. And it was just different than anything I had heard. It was fast and melodic, but it was also, kind of dark and not really heavy, but, hardcore-ish. And so, yeah, it just stood out as something new, and, it was super fast drumming, and lyrically was different than the other bands I was listening to, and so it just kind of grabbed my attention.
Yeah, what were you listening to kind of at the time when you say lyrically it was different? Because, I mean, like, obviously Good Riddance is quite a political band when it comes down to it, which is pretty common in punk, I suppose. But, I mean, not every band is singing about politics, or at least not straight up about politics. So kind of what were you listening to at that time that lyrically Good Riddance was set apart?
I'm guessing it was, just mostly, tooth and nail punk bands. And it's not that some of those didn't have political stuff, but, you add in kind of the anti-eating meat and, just different little clips they would have in their songs that just kind of made you think like, oh, like they're singing about something maybe I don't really know what it is, but I know that it's different, and kind of grabs your attention because you're like, oh, like this, what is this, and
For sure, yeah. Because, I mean, like obviously was it the last band we talked about? I think like Pennywise, they were pretty political as well.
Yeah.
But I do think like Good Riddance was more on the nose political, for sure. But I can pinpoint kind of my exposure to Good Riddance because I went to like a small festival. Actually, one of the bands that played at this festival was The Undecided, who of course go back a couple episodes. You got an interview with Dan from The Undecided.
Yeah.
And but there was some just random band that played, and they actually played a cover of for Fertile Fields. I never know if it's Fertile Fields or Fertile Fields, because Fertile Fields, you're fertile. We're going with Fertile Fields. It just feels like it's more of a mouthful that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, they played this song, and I was like, what is this? I know this. Like, it was familiar to me, and I knew that it wasn't their song. They may have even said at the beginning it was a cover song. And all I could remember was and it seems so cruel, right? I was like, what? And it would just get stuck in my head, like in the repeat sort of thing. Fast forward a few months, because this was kind of like before really, like, you could Google wasn't a thing. It was probably Ask Jeeves at the time or something. You know, you could like go and search and maybe you'd figure it out. The internet wasn't what it is now, but so I couldn't really figure that out, but it was always in my head. Fast forward a few months, and I was at we must have been visiting family. We were in Medicine Hat, and I was in the car with my cousins, and this song comes on, and I'm like, man, I'd never heard this song before. I'm like, I dig this song, and it ended up being the song Genie. So that I was like, what is this? I need to find out more about this. And so anyway, at that point I can't remember if then it was just listening with my cousins, because I feel like it was on a mix CD that they were playing. Like, I don't think it was actually the album, but
yeah.
So then I think I must have gone out then and searched out Ballads and bought it, and sure enough, Fertile Fields is the first song on the album, and I'm like, this song, like, it stuck with me from like the summer.
That's awesome.
I feel like this was winter now at some point. I was like, yes, this is incredible. So from there, it was I listened to that album just basically on repeat. And it's the first album we're going to talk about. Like I said, we got 2 albums. Your pick was Fertile Fields. So
Ballads of the Revolution.
Yeah. No, your pick was specifically the song Fertile Fields. We're not talking about anything else. Ballads from the Revolution. So we're going to talk about it. So why don't you kind of lay it out here, your thoughts on the record? Yeah,
well, just to touch base lyrically, I think there's some of it that does touch on politics or whatever. I mean, I'm terrible at deciphering lyrics, but I think just that was more like even just social justice. So not necessarily just politics, but, you know, things going on in the world, or I got a sneeze coming.
Let her go. Oh, no, that's not a sneeze. If
Sorry.
that's a sneeze, that's a very sad sneeze. No. Was that a sneeze?
No, I think I just.
That sounded like a cough.
I couldn't get it out. I did cough too.
Just. Come on.
Oh man. Okay. Anyways,
free the hashtag. Free the sneeze. Speaking of social justice, free the sneeze, Aaron. Free the sneeze.
So I don't. When I listen to it, it's not like I don't remember sitting there contemplating like, oh, what is. I knew it was different. I could decipher that much, but I just kind of left it as is, and. But yeah, just an album that got a lot of play. They blend, melodic hardcore and punk and melody so well. You know, even in all their whole discography, they can have songs that are just kind of fast and pissed off, and the next song is just super melodic and catchy. And I got to see them live. I was still in high school in Dauphin. We drove up to Regina. And I remember that was like a pinnacle live show. I don't know, there's just something special about them, just the way that Russ kind of commanded the crowd and led the show, that it was so good. So that kind of ties to, because I think that maybe it would have been around when that album came out. Maybe there was an album out after that already. But so there's something about kind of seeing a band when an album comes out to kind of help it stick in your mind, and
sure,
just to kind of have something to relay it to.
I'm kind of curious, what year do you think that was that you saw them?
Oh, maybe like,
because you said you're in high school, right?
Yeah, it's like maybe like 2000. So yeah, I guess it would have been something else. There would have been an album out after that.
Because Ballads was 98. I'm just looking here because like Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit was 2001.
So must have.
Which
been,
is I think when I saw them. Do you remember who played that show with them?
Oh man, I'd have to go back and look at that. I can't remember that.
Because I know I saw them and in Calgary, and I'm just wondering if it was that tour where, but because there were two shows that I went to, I think. Maybe there were more. It was a venue in Calgary called the Warehouse. And I feel like there was a stretch there where all the time Fat Wreck bands were playing there. And so like Good Riddance I saw, Rise Against I saw, and Mad Caddies I saw. But I felt like Mad Caddies were on one of those two shows.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. So
I'll have to go back, and I don't know if I'll be able to find it.
Now I'm curious. But yeah, I'm just looking at their discography. I just wanted to see when, because so they had Ballads in 98, Operation Phoenix in 99, and then Symptoms in 2001. And I think there was an EP in between Operation Phoenix and Symptoms as well.
Yeah, so there could have been. I mean, I don't know if I would have had those albums or not. I mean,
I'm just curious if it was the same tour we saw them on.
Yeah, that was also the only time. So we drove home after the show, which is 3.5 hour drive, and I think that's the only time that I've been in a vehicle that's run out of gas. So I remember falling asleep in the back seat and then waking up and just being like what's going on? And one of my friend's dads had to drive out and bring us gas. And it might have also been the same trip that I think we hit a dog on the highway or something random like that.
So running out of gas, that's funny. I did not run out of gas driving to or from a Good Riddance show, but the one time, I think I've only been in a vehicle that ran out of gas once as well. I think I was driving my wife to work at the time. We only had one vehicle. I was driving her to work, and we ran out of gas on the way to dropping her off at work. The best part is that we both at that time worked at gas stations.
Oh, funny.
So it's like you should probably never run out of gas, right?
Yeah.
And the person that came and brought us gas worked at another gas station in that same town.
Wow.
It was just kind of funny that we all worked at different gas stations and somehow, some way ran out of gas. So
no one's got gas.
Yeah, but I think it's funny that you bring up, if it was the same tour, I'll bring this up now because it actually ties in with Ballads, but I've only seen them live once. They came up and played in Edmonton. So when I saw them, it was in Calgary, but they came and played in Edmonton shortly after I moved here. And it was like after they'd been on hiatus or broken up or whatever, it was like this one-off show where they came up, and I just didn't go for whatever reason. And I kind of regret it. They've been back, I think, a few times, and I still haven't gone back and seen them. But
oh man,
the one time I did see them, we got to the show early, and I was just hanging out with this guy who went to my high school. I didn't go to the show with him. We just both happened to meet there. I think he was a grade above me maybe, but we were just kind of hanging out talking. And then Russ Rankin comes walking over before the show. And so we stopped him and we were chatting with him. And the guy from my high school was talking about, trying to become a vegan and all this stuff and being inspired by Russ's lyrics and what have you. And I said, hey, are you going to play the song Fertile Fields? Because he's like,
it's fertile fields.
Yeah, he's like, you dumbass, it's fertile fields. No, but anyways, I was like, because man, I love that song. He's like, yeah, we might play it. Of course, it's like one of their biggest songs, right?
Yeah.
But, so anyways, what was cool is when the show's happening, they start playing this song, and because he said to me, he's like, yeah, if we play it, you better dance, right? Was his comment. I was like, yeah, I'll probably be up near the front. I'm not really much of a dancer. Like I don't go in the pit. I stand on the edge of the pit, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then but anyway, so as they're playing the song, I'm only a couple rows back from the stage, and I can see him kind of looking around as he's singing the song. And sure enough, on the first, It Seems So Cruel thing, the repeat, he shoves the mic in my face.
Wow.
And I'm like, awesome. Oh man, that was so awesome. And then my cousin is standing behind me, who I was in the car with when I first heard Good Riddance. It was his car. He was standing behind me. And then on the other side of me was an old family friend who I hadn't seen for years. So they're both just yeah, patting me on the back. I was like, yeah, that's kind of funny. But that moment, out of probably any show I've been to, is definitely one of those moments that stood out where I was like, oh shoot, he actually, it wasn't a matter of, you go to hardcore shows and guys are getting up right in the singer's face sort of thing. I was like, either it was purely coincidental or he legit remembered what I looked like and looked for me. I'm going with that story and shoved the mic in my face.
That's awesome. Another random story about that. I don't know if you knew that he married Rachel, who was a VJ on, right, like a video jockey or whatever on Much Music, which is the Canadian version of MTV. And I remember just thinking like that was so odd. But then he had her name tattooed on the side of his neck, and
hold
on,
you want to get
together, but
you want to get odd. Let's see if I don't know if I'll be able. Yeah, let's click on this. But Russ Rankin, he's done. Will this come up here? I don't know if you ever took. Okay, here we go. In addition to music, Russ Rankin is a hockey scout.
Yeah,
currently,
that's right.
Yeah, currently he's the California Western United States regional scout for the Tri-City Americans, a hockey team that competes in the Western Hockey League. Rankin held the same position with the Kootenay Ice from 2007 to 2012 and was on staff when Kootenay won the WHL championship in 2011. So this is what's kind of cool. I don't know if you ever, when you bought CDs, did you ever like take the CD tray out? You know how you take the booklet out, right?
Yeah.
But like underneath the CD, you could pop the tray out. Did you ever do that?
Like to see if there was like stuff written on that? Yeah.
So like on Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit, if you pop the tray out, there's a picture. I can't remember if Russ is in it, but it's a picture of Scott Niedermayer at the time of the New Jersey Devils holding the Stanley Cup above his head.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was so rad. And so Russ went on to become a hockey scout. I'm not sure if that's up to date. That's on his Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I think because he just talked about, he was on a different podcast this summer, and he talked about how he's still involved in that.
Yeah. So he's been vegan since 93 and straight edge since 97. So that's, anyway, just random things. His middle name is Chapin.
Oh, wow. What a special man.
Russell Chapin Rankin. Yeah. I was trying to see if it said anything about his marriage, but
do you have that album on CD?
Symptoms or Ballads? So, I used to. I don't think I do anymore.
Oh man, I've been trying to hunt down Good Riddance CDs. They're hard to find.
Yeah, they're like out of like because I'm assuming you mean at like thrift shops and stuff like that.
Anywhere, even online. And
oh yeah. I wonder if I don't really go looking for CDs much anymore outside of the odd time at thrift stores and whatnot. But so I'm like, I don't know if they're still readily available or not. But I used to have them, and then I sold them in the Great CD Sale, I believe, when we bought a pool table. There are times I got great stories out of that whole thing. But there are times where I regret it.
You need a tattoo of just a pool table with a stack of CDs on it. Says no regrets.
No regrets. except for a couple.
So, anyways, back to the original question
Ballads.
about. So the first song that I remember standing out to me was "Sacrifice." So it's the second track on there, and it's just something, and just how it just starts off, and just the lyric is like, "I'd set myself on fire." That sacrifice desiring. So as I was listening through that this week, I don't really know what the song is about or what he's getting at, but I just remember that song really standing out, and I still love it.
I think so. A couple of things that I wrote down about that song. So first and foremost, every time I hear that song, the first thing that comes to mind. Have you ever seen the picture of the Vietnamese Buddhist monk who lit himself on fire? I can't remember his name. But he lit himself on fire in protest. It was like the early 60s, I think. It's the cover of Rage Against the Machine's like self-titled album, their first one.
Okay.
But so anytime I hear this song, Sacrifice, that's immediately what I think. Even though I don't think it's on nearly the same political level as that. Because I think this song is just mainly about like, like going after something, and if you want it enough, you'll make those sacrifices. I don't think he's actually talking about lighting himself on fire, but like sacrificing things that otherwise you might go, oh, man, I'd love to hang with the boys this weekend, but instead it's like sacrificing that and working for things or whatever. I think it's pretty great. But yeah, that lyric always pops. It is interesting though, because that lyric conjuring up that imagery for me, like. Good Riddance and Rage Against the Machine were kind of like two bands that at the same time that I was really into, that were heavily political, and I would say probably similar in their politics. I don't know about the fine-tuned parts of their politics, but yeah, it is funny that that song reminds me of another super political band that I absolutely love. Which maybe one day we will talk about them on this show. Yeah. But I've brought them up before and you roll your eyes.
Well, they're just one of those bands that I kind of missed the boat on. Actually, they might be one of the first, well, them and No Effects. There was a guy in middle school. He must have been a year older than me. It might have even been the first time I saw band shirts because I didn't know what it was, but I knew I liked it. So he had a Rage Against the Machine one with a picture of that like, not cartoon, but whatever that album cover is.
Oh, like Evil Empire.
Yeah. And then he also had a No Effects hoodie, and I remember thinking, like, what is Nofix? Like, whatever, like, logo was on, I was like, that looks really cool. I don't know what Nofix is, but...
but I like the way that looks.
So anyways, that's a story for different time or whatever, but...
Turns out they're a really shitty band.
Yeah. So anyways, I missed the boat on Rage, but we can get into that.
We will do them sometime, and I will make you love them.
Yeah.
I will make you love them. But yeah, Sacrifice, it's always been a song for me that stood out off that record as well. And I think it's because of, like, it's short. I mean, they have a number of songs that are short, but like that opening line, like, wait, he's got a what now?
Yeah. Well, it's just the way it comes in. I think it just counts in on the hi-hat and just right into a cool riff, and I don't know, that song always stands out. And the other one that I have is the final track, Years From Now. And I remember that one always, it just starts with, the fast drums on the floor tom and snare. And so as I was listening to that again this week and reading through the lyrics, and like I'm a big nostalgia guy, like there's lots of things I look back on, and so kind of that in one part, but I also feel like often in life, I wouldn't say I spend a lot of time contemplating. But one of the things that does come up often is what I'm doing matters, like in 10 years, so sometimes when I'm making a decision, whether it's buying something or going somewhere or whatever, it's like in a year or 10 years from now, is it going to make a difference if I do this or not, or how will this decision impact something? And so, I don't know, I just thought that was a cool closing to the album and easy to relate to.
Sure. This song is actually a prime example, I think, of what I love about Good Riddance lyrically, because I think they have a good way of writing songs about like community and togetherness. Yeah. Like on this record, the track Understood is like a prime example of it, but I get similar vibes from this one, even though like Understood is like that one. Do you remember when 500 stood as one, reach for the sky or whatever? I love that song, and I kind of get similar vibes from this one, but like looking at it, like going like, okay, yeah, like we're in this together right now, but when, we're 10 years down the road or whatever, will we look back and go, were we in it together for the right reasons? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a pretty great song. 'Cause I think they also talk about, oh no, that's on the next, I'm not going to jump ahead yet. But yeah, like in a similar fashion to, I think, with some of these songs, I get similar vibes to like Face to Face, just in like lyric writing, like, cause I've always loved Trevor Keith's lyrics. Right. And like Trevor Keith is a songwriter who we talked about, who pretty much any song and every song that guy puts out, I'm going to be like, yeah, I can get behind that. There's nothing, but he also kind of writes songs in a way that it's like, well, who couldn't get behind what he's saying?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, and I think of that with Good Riddance. I mean, there's lots of it where it's like, well, I'm not an activist for animals or whatever, but he just has this conviction about the way he writes and how he sings it that like I'm singing along and I'm just like, like why?
Yeah.
I'm not angry about eating animals, but this guy is, and the song is awesome, so I'm going with it.
As I had a note about that on Symptoms too, like, cause there's a song where they're specifically about that. Right. And I'm like, you know what? I'm finding myself singing along, but I still love burgers and tacos. Like, but I could also see how someone would be turned off from the band because of that, because there are songs where his politics or his personal beliefs, which is not a bad thing. Like I commend writers for, you want to write what's you, right? Like, and so, but I could see people being like, oh, Good Riddance, that's that band where he's always yelling at me for eating meat, right? Like I could get that because like that song, especially on, is there one on Ballads too? I feel like there is.
About eating meat?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's. Yeah,
is it the one where he says
definitely is.
meat is murder in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Like
I'm always like,
who will be there for them, and
yeah. Because then on Symptoms they have one too, which is called. Is it called Waste? I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, that's the one where he talks about like burning their slaughterhouses to the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but anyway, I could see someone being like, yeah, that's sort of the vegans always yelling at me to stop eating meat. I don't really like them, right? Like,
yeah,
but
it's
but
not
for
over
the most
top.
part,
It's it's a few songs here and there. If it was
that's
half
what,
the album, then it might get a little much. But
sure. And I'm saying that's the one thing about it is that it is only I want to say maybe where it's that in your face. It's like maybe one song an album, as far as like talking about vegan sort of stuff is concerned. But yeah, but going back to the songs that you brought up on Ballads, like I do think when they get into that zone, writing that way, I'm just like 100%. Like, yeah, I could listen to this all day. And it's again similarly to a band that I think we'll have to cover again because we covered it in our past life, but I want to but I want to do it again. But H2O, like with Toby in his lyrics, I go, man, like that guy listening to that band, I'm like, oh, I feel inspired. But with bands like H2O and Face to Face, I feel inspired through almost every song that I hear. Whereas like Good Riddance, it's not quite that same because I think sometimes they have songs where it's like they drive a specific point home even more on the nose, and I'm kind of like, the veganism is really one thing.
Yeah, and this is kind of maybe a little bit of a rabbit trail thought here that just popped into my head, but I wonder if it goes both ways. So like, a lot of the bands we talk about, are faith-based bands or whatever. I wonder if when people listen to those, if they can get, even if they don't believe that, can they get behind those lyrics the same as, I can get behind something like anti-meat that really doesn't,
Yeah, I do.
Kind of a random thought, but
I know for sure. Like, because I mean, there are some bands where I kind of go, like we talked about it with Goaty Hook, right? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Bands maybe these days write a little different. That would kind of classify themselves under that whole like Christian or faith-based umbrella, whatever you want to call it. So like when they're writing now, maybe it's a little different than Goaty Hook writing Ookla the Punk, sort of deal. But I think it can definitely come up sometimes and be like, but at the same point, like bands like MXPX, like they had success and they were having success when that was still kind of part of what they were doing, right? Like, I mean, obviously their first kind of real kick at the can at any sort of mainstream success was Life in General, and it wasn't nearly as in your face as it was on Teenage Politics and Pokin' At Ya, right? But it was still there, and they were still doing that in their live shows, and then kind of from there, I think it sort of became a little bit of a not as in your face. He's not literally quoting scripture in his music.
Yeah. I just feel like I've seen it so much in the last, even decade of bands that are really out there, faith-wise, and they get all this flack. But then again, there's, a band talking about everything else, whether it's veganism or whatever rapper is talking about murder or whatever, like,
right. And I mean, I think to an extent, say like, whether you want to say it's glorifying violence or not in like hip hop music, like I'm not well versed in hip hop by any means. But like, I think there are people who take that stand against hip hop and rap and going, you're just talking about violence and killing people and all this kind of stuff. And at the same point, I kind of go, well, they're probably just writing, like you get a lot of the same stuff in like, say like early New York hardcore sort of stuff, right? Like, I think they're just writing what they're coming out of a lot of the times. But
that's true.
But when it comes to like, say a Christian band getting flack for having, all sorts of Christian message and imagery in their music, I think it is kind of weird, but because Christian music, quote unquote, is kind of like a genre thing of itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, whereas, like you don't really think of, I mean, I guess to an extent there was like, or is like straight edge, hardcore sort of stuff and whatnot, which that kind of comes into play a little bit. That might be the closest thing that gets flack for like really putting their message into their music. But of course that comes with the whole side of it, where it was like there was a lot of militant straight edge sort of people, right? But I just don't think it's as big of a thing where it's like, oh, they're a vegan band, right? Like with Russ Rankin, he's not singing about his veganism in a majority of his songs, right? Whereas like straight edge bands, especially from back in the day, it was like, well, like every song was about how you shouldn't do drugs or drink because it makes you a bad person. Or what have you, right? I would actually suggest you should, I don't know if you've seen it or not. Do you watch Finn McKenty at all on YouTube? He does the Punk Rock MBA. Did you see his straight edge video that he did somewhat recently?
No, I saw it posted there, but there's only so many of those that I can. They're all like 25 minutes long, and so
they're usually, I think, about 15 minutes.
Yeah. He's a smart guy. He's got lots of good stuff to say. Just depends the mood I'm in if I want to put up with it or not.
Yeah, I definitely don't watch every single one, but I do like. He's got some that piqued my interest, and that was just an interesting look because he kind of broke down on that video, sort of like different sectors or whatever you want to call it, different groups, I guess, of like straight edge, and like how it affected. It was actually an interesting look at how a lot of these kids were affected by trauma in their lives. I was like, whoa, man, sure. I did not see this coming. Like you were going to break it down and you were going to, kind of go that route, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is a rabbit trail for sure that we just went down, but I think because a lot of Christian bands, there's definitely the Christian bands that are like, oh, we're not a Christian band, we're Christians in a band sort of vibe. And then there's the ones that are like, yeah, it's just straight up, but I think because it makes its way into a lot of their songs, that's sort of where it like can kind of become a label for them or whatever. Right. Like, so, I mean, it could be very different. Yeah. If like Good Riddance, if they were like, oh, let's say like 3 out of every 5 songs is about being a vegan, like, oh yeah, that's that vegan band, which I made that comment earlier about seeing why some people could be turned off by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ballads is a killer album.
Yeah. It goes by fast. Like it's 25, 30 minutes. Like I listened through it. It was just like, man, like that just kind of rips through but it's awesome. Cause then it's like, sweet, I'm ready for the next one.
Well, hold on. I did have a couple more things. But I was going to say, like, with, you mentioned it, like, I'm always surprised with how much this album, like, rips. When I put it on, I'm like, because in my mind, I think about it, I'm like, yeah, there's some good songs on there. And then there's some not so good songs. But I think when I put the album on, I'm like, no, it doesn't, like, I think also because the songs are pretty short and fast, that it's like, even the ones that I'm like are,
bit slower.
They're gone in an instant, right? Like, and you're moving on to the next one. But I did want to say, like, you listen on Spotify?
Yeah. Well, I have them on my phone,
right?
And also Spotify.
Because I'll say, because Apple Music, it doesn't have, like, this album, Ballads, doesn't have the cover of "I Stole Your Love."
Oh, it's so good.
No, I was so happy it's not on there. Because then all of a sudden I was like looking at that, I was like, oh yeah, stole your love. I'm like, I don't really like that song.
Yeah, again, when that came out, it's like, because I remember that on that album, when I first heard it, kind of thinking like, oh, this doesn't really sound like the rest of the songs, but, I had no context to even know it was a cover song.
Yeah, well,
I just thought it was a part of the album, and so.
Yeah, well, because they have a cover on Symptoms as well, right? Like, so it's kind of interesting, but, and then, I did have a note. Waste is off of Ballads. I was talking the vegan song.
Oh, yeah.
I think we were talking about the same song. I feel like there could be one now that I'm just mixing things up that is on what's it called? Symptoms as well. But I was just going to say too, like they are a band where I don't necessarily agree with all of their politics, that I could still like, man, this song is just it's an absolute rager, because Rage Against the Machine. But yes, let's move. The other album, which we've mentioned a couple times, is Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit.
Yeah. So how did you get in contact with that album? What stood out about that?
So this record, I want to say, was the first maybe Good Riddance album to come out after I'd gotten into them.
Okay.
Or it came out right around the time I was discovering them. Like I was listening to this one when it was new. And so, yeah, this record for me, there's a lot of stuff that I love about this record. First and foremost, it takes me immediately when I put it on. I am in my grandparents' basement in Nova Scotia.
Ooh, Grandpa likes Good Riddance, eh?
Grandpa loves Good Riddance. But no, we were there for Christmas one year, and it was like a big family thing, and I was staying down in the basement. And so to escape the family, sometimes I'd go down to the base, and I just had like a portable CD player and headphones.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even have a portable CD player. I was playing it on my grandmother's computer was downstairs, so I'd put it in the CD-ROM or whatever and play. And I'd just be like, "Oh, this record's so good." And it's funny because there was another album that I had on that trip that I can't put my finger on as to what it was, but I know I had these two different records that I was listening to. But Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit was all like, as soon as I put it on, I'm like, oh, yep, I'm back down in that basement under the fluorescent lights on the linoleum floors, sleeping on the cot, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I love those memories that go with music.
Right? And yeah, you're just using it to escape my family. Like, I have no reason to escape my family, but it's what I was doing when I was like 16 years old or whatever.
It's not like it was a negative escape. I mean, I was the same, right? Just need to get away and listen to punk.
Yeah. What about you? What was your kind of introduction or exposure to this album?
Yeah, again, because the one after Ballads, Operation Phoenix, that was another really big one too. And that one was like, from what I remember, like straight hardcore punk. It didn't have as much of the melody, but which they brought back again on Symptoms. Yeah, I think just again, I had a group of friends that was one of their favorite bands, and they probably had it around. But I can't recall specific memories with that album.
To tie this record into our previous episode, your interview with Ryan from Off the Record, this album was recorded at the Blasting Room.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great because, so for me, I was introduced to the Descendants and all after listening to bands like Good Riddance and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But when I put those records on, like when I go back and listen to Descendants, I could, the first band that actually comes to mind for me is Good Riddance in the sound that I hear. So it's interesting to me that, they did a couple records with Bill and Stefan from Descendants, which is pretty great. But so here's a couple of facts about this record. Okay, fact number 1: this is my favorite Good Riddance record.
So why, maybe just on that, why does this one stand out differently than, say, Ballads?
So this will lead into an interesting quote I found. So for me, I found that they grew both for me, like lyrically and melodically. Like I just felt like they got to be better songwriters all around. And so this was a quote from Russ Rankin. If you want to find this one, it's on the most trustworthy sources of Wikipedia. But Russ said, "Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit, I think it was the pinnacle. It was definitely the pinnacle for us as far as our career. If you just want to go by numbers, like the year that came out, we were in every weekly. All of our shows were bumped up to the bigger rooms. We sold out our whole European tour, and that was about as good as it ever got for us. And that was pretty cool for that to happen. Like that record was, I just have a lot of, I like how they include like his like half thoughts. I just have a lot of really good memories about that year personally and band-wise. Everything just went really, really well for us. We had a really successful year, and I still think that record, and to a lesser extent the EP that came before it, were where I finally found my stride as a songwriter. And I think like
that's awesome.
For me, like that's what really stood out, is like all of a sudden he took that step as a songwriter for me. They also had a member change. There's a different drummer on this record. They'd kind of gone through it because I think like their original drummer like left after Operation Phoenix.
Yeah, because I was going to say he wasn't with them the first time I saw them, which I was really bummed about. So thankfully when I saw them again 5 years ago or whenever it was, he was back with them.
Right.
So that was awesome.
I mean, anyone who's played for him, I didn't write down any names, but it's just blazingly fast drummers.
Yeah.
But also this was their only record to actually chart at all. I think peaked at like number 32 or something, which is great. And the final fact is that it took me until now to realize that the artwork for this album is laid out in track number 1.
What do you mean?
Well, because like I was always like, what's the deal with the art for this record? Because like Ballads definitely has the better artwork, but like so like for Symptoms, I'm like, well, the first song is called Fire Engine Red,
right?
And so I'm like, yep, the color of the album is Fire Engine Red, and then he talks about Fallen Angels. I'm like, oh, yeah. I was like, look at that, it's the artwork right there.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
But yeah, no, I this record I sent you because we decided we were going to pick a couple songs to kind of focus on, and so I'd sent you a list of the songs that I was going to go with, and you're like, dude, I thought we were only doing like 2 songs. I was like, man, this was like just
I know
just
it's hard
an exercise in futility, because I was like, as I was listening to the album, I'm like, okay, I should pick songs. I was like, okay, this song's good, and this song's good. And I literally had like the first 5 songs from the album, and then a couple more later, I was like, this isn't going to work. So I cut it down to just 2 songs. Then even as I was like listening to those 2 songs, I was like, dang, did I want to change that?
Yeah, well, it's hard with a band like Good Riddance because a lot of their songs are similar. So if one song's good, the other 5 will be good. So yeah, it was the same with Ballads. I kind of went through the lyrics of every song, and it's like there's so many I could have picked. But
to be fair, for Ballads, I was hoping you were going to pick Fertile Fields, which I assumed we'd talk about anyway, and Genie. Those are my 2 favorites off that record.
Okay.
But,
yeah, I do love those ones too.
So the first song that I went with off of Symptoms was Enter the Unapproachables. First and foremost, because I don't think unapproachables is actually a word. Anytime I typed it, my phone was like, no, that's not a word. I'm like, well, I guess because unapproachable is a verb. It's not a noun. Anyway, whatever. The thing that stood out to me this time listening to this record or this album, anytime this song came on where he talks about building a wall, I'm like, it just seems so fitting for like American politics. And I just kind of chuckle, even though knowing the song is not about that at all. It's, again, tying back into some of the themes we talked about off of Ballads is just about having community, not being alone, not shutting people out, right? Like actually letting people into your life, which is another sort of, I guess, like comparison to Trevor Keith and his songwriting. I feel like he kind of fits that mold a little bit too. And the fact that on this, I think this is a prime example of what makes this album stand out for me is that the lyrics became less, for me anyways, political and more personal. Like there's still definitely there's still definitely politics on there, but at the same time they're like emo sad boys. Right. There are some songs on here where I'm like, oh yeah, which was the same on Ballads where he's like the classic, like the classic pop punk trope where he's like, he likes a girl who likes another guy. Right. He's like, why don't you like me? He kind of gets into that a little bit at different times, which I mean, whatever, those are still good songs. I'm not going to complain about that, but did you have thoughts on Enter the Unapproachables?
Yeah, not specifically. I mean, even just on the album as a whole, for some reason in my mind I thought that it was like way more melodic, but as I listened through, like it still has lots of fast songs and not aggressive parts, but
yeah, one of the notes I'd taken was that I think like they dialed the tempo down a little bit, but not really. Like it was kind of a similar thing when I got into it. I was like, man, there's still a lot of like, and maybe it's because like before they were like fast, right? Yeah. Like they were just from the first stick count all the way through. It was like, let's see how fast we can go. Whereas this on Symptoms, and I think maybe that's what kind of gets me into it a little bit more, is it does add a little bit more dynamic, is that they did slow it down a little bit, but they're still like right up there with fast punk bands. It's just not like bada 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 bada, right? It's just as fast as they can go. So I just think I liked that the energy's harnessed a little more, maybe is a good way to put it, on this album.
Yeah, I feel like they always did a really good job of that. Like they knew, like even on like albums like Ballads, there was still enough mid-tempo songs to break it up, and it wasn't just straight fast the whole time, which I would have loved either way. But even now, I go back, it kind of helps the album to hold up. And
right.
So yeah, they always did a really good job of that, I thought.
Yeah, I definitely thought like this album, it feels similar to Ballads, but at the same point, I think it is structured a little more cohesively.
Yeah.
The other song that I picked was Libertine. And the first thing that jumped out to me about this song listening to it is that the riff in that song reminds me of Teenage Politics era MXPX.
Oh, we'll have to go back and listen.
Yeah, go back and listen to it. You'll be like, shoot. Like, that's which I think is fair to say is actually more of a Descendants inspiration than anything, right? Like, those are... I don't know if I've ever actually heard Russ Rankin or anyone from Good Riddance say, yeah, I was inspired by Descendants. But we know for a fact that MXPX was.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
So like, and the fact that going back and listening to Descendants, I go, man, I hear a whole lot of like Good Riddance through this, or what would later become Good Riddance. Like, it's obvious. I think they were inspired by them. But I think this is just another example of the Good Riddance that I love in music, similar to Face to Face and writing songs. Just there's a whole lot of going like, yeah, you're not alone in this sort of thing. Because I think it's even the next song on the record, maybe. That Trial of the Century was like kind of one of the ones that I was bouncing around going like, he's just like good at writing songs that kind of can make you go, you know what, if you're having a bad day, I'm going to pick you up. Again, saying, you know, there's value, there's importance in having people in your life, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, and another thing that they did well, you know, they had the songs that were, you know, that were ticked off at the World or whatever, right? Whether it was veganism or political. Yeah. But they also had, they did a really good job of, just positive and, whether it was talking about community or whatever, right? Just that we're all going through things, and so let's do it together.
The one complaint I have about this album is similar to, I guess, the complaint that I had about Ballads, but on this one, it's actually on the Apple Music version, is another cover song. The very last song, In My Head, it was a secret song on like the actual physical release. Like, I think you had to skip through a couple minutes of silence before you got to it. And at that point, I thought it was cool. Like, I liked it because it's like, oh, what is it going to be? And it's like this kind of like poppy, sort of cover. I like this cover more than the Kiss cover on Ballads, but I'm still, it's like, it's definitely, which is funny because a lot of times when bands include covers on albums, it's like, it ends up being the best song on the album. Right. Right. You're like, oh, this is great. But on these ones, I'm like, no, like they're actually not. In My Head is fine. That's the one that's like, here in my head, I hear you say, or whatever, right? Like, but as a secret track, I thought it was cool. But yeah, on like Apple Music, and I'm assuming on Spotify, like just digital streaming services, they cut all that out, and it's just a track on its own. Like, and it ends the album. I'm like, I could have done without that.
Yeah, well, and they put out a cover album as well, so maybe they should have just kept those on there.
They clearly liked playing covers, which is, fine. It's a thing that, I mean, punk bands have been notorious for playing covers. It's fine. I get excited when I go to a show and they're like, we're going to play a cover. I'm like, yeah, what's it going to be? And then if you don't know it, it's kind of like, meh. Yeah. But if you know it, you're like, yeah, this is awesome, right? But, so, I mean, it's definitely, and obviously there's entire compilation series of bands playing covers. Like, it's a thing, and it's fine. It's just sometimes I feel like, because even like going back, Stretch Armstrong on Revolution Transmission. Cover. Well, on Revolution Transmission, they had a Counting Crows cover, which Angels of the Silences, which was actually good. I was like, oh, this is pretty legit. But at the same point, I'm like, was it necessary? I don't know. Could have done without it, I suppose. Because it always feels like, especially when the cover's like, it ends up being the last song on the album, which has happened a couple times. I'm like, was that how your album was supposed to end?
Yeah, I know. It's always kind of a bit of a bummer. Like, they just kind of throw it on just to have the extra song. And
when it's not needed. Right. Like, when you're talking about punk albums, like that cover, because I think on Symptoms, it's like track 15. I'm like, that's probably not necessary.
Yeah.
Although technically on the original release, it would have been, 14 or whatever. And just, it was a secret track. And then, for whatever reason, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Another fun fact, I can't remember the title of the song, but I used a Good Riddance song at my wedding.
Oh. Is it the one where it's just all palm muting?
I can't even remember if it's off of this album or the next one. Okay. It was like a really melodic, one of the really melodic one, just so that people weren't freaking out. But
yeah, because like their song Pisces, I debated actually picking that song. because it's like it's so good, and it comes with like the bass line, and whatever. It's too good. But
Yeah, awesome, love it.
That's awesome. Though you used Good Riddance in your wedding. I don't think I get any.
Oh man,
punk puns.
I had all kinds of songs in there.
Like I used Copeland in my wedding, and some Tegan and Sarah.
Okay, well there was one song that I had. Sorry, another little random rabbit trail. So like during the reception, we had a slideshow of pictures, me and my wife, and so we had music playing in one song, and the guy was doing the sound, like he had it fairly loud. And this one song came on that was like pretty heavy. And I remember being like, "Oh man, like, was this like how's everyone feeling in the room here right
They're
now?"
just leaving. They're like, "We're out of here."
I mean,
thanks for the cake.
Well, and two of the guys from that band were at my wedding, and so I was kind of like, "Oh, I bet they think this is awesome," but everybody else probably hates this. But
or they're like, "This guy's an idiot. What is he doing?"
Yeah. Hey man, my wedding.
Yeah, that's fair. That's awesome. Were you like one of those weddings where you had like, instead of a first dance, it was just like everyone was hardcore dancing?
No, we didn't do any dance at all. I did have friends, that were punks too, and at their weddings they just like had punk hardcore music playing, and everyone just kind of like push moshed awkwardly or whatever.
Yeah.
The 10 friends, everyone else just kind of stood around but
it's like, what the heck is going on?
No, I didn't take it to that extreme. I didn't put my wife through that embarrassment.
That's fair. So, out of these two albums, what's your pick?
Yeah, it's hard because I love Good Riddance so much. I mean, I'm gonna stick with Ballads because it was the first album of theirs I heard. I know it the most. When I still put it on, it takes me back. But I mean, every Good Riddance album brings me just as much joy. So,
yeah.
Well, I'll stick with Ballads.
Yeah, it's funny because through this practice, I was like going into it, I was like, I picked Symptoms. I'm going to go with Symptoms. And I think I am going to go with Symptoms. But there was a moment where I was like, or I shouldn't just say a moment, there was like a day or two where I was like, man, but Ballads rips so hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And then I go back to Symptoms and I'm like, but damn, Symptoms is really good.
I think also because there was a few songs, or at least one, I think a few off Ballads that were on compilations too that I listened to a ton. So maybe just having that memory as well. And
that's fair. But yeah, I think I am going to go with Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit, just because like when I again started looking a little closer to it, I was like, nah, you know what, like lyrically I think they're so good. Like I think they got better, and then musically again, like I think they opened it up a little bit and stretched themselves a little bit. Like obviously they're Good Riddance, they didn't stretch themselves that far from where they were coming from,
right?
But I think it really paid off what they did. So this is something that just kind of popped into my mind right now that I think I want to do going forward. And this is for, if you're on, did you say you're on Spotify? I think you did, right?
Yeah,
like
that's what I use for streaming. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do it for Apple Music and Spotify, but I think we should start making a playlist. So
I've got all sorts of playlists already.
Yes, but between these two albums, you have to pick one Good Riddance song that's going to go on the playlist. What is it going to be?
So it's going to, okay.
I'm trying to decide if we'll like do one from each album sort of thing, or if it's just like one from each band.
Like
so
we're just
right
making
now,
a 2-song playlist?
Well, no. I'm going to keep I'll keep adding to it as we go. So, but this will just be the first song. So what is the song that you're going to go with? Putting the pressure on you.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with Salt. Because that was one. I mean, I don't really love it lyrically. It's essentially just kind of talking about going to shows and whatever, which was...
Yeah. No, now that you say that, I was super hoping you were going to pick that song.
Oh, it's got such a killer riff when it comes in with the fast drums. It's so catchy.
The chorus, I was like, it reminds me of Mad Caddies. I think it might be the last song on Rock the Plank, where they're singing about like basically similar things, where it's like people going to like their main reason they get into the pit is to just hurt people, right? And how that's just not cool. And so like when that song comes, I'm like, yeah. So I'll support that. I like that it's, it's not like one of their, I also would have supported picking something like Fertile Fields and whatever, or like any of those songs. But I like Salt. I think it's a good pick in the sense that it starts the show off right.
Yeah.
Guys, don't be dicks in the pit, okay?
Yeah, I mean, songs like that are good. I mean, obviously, I relate to it. I grew up going to shows, but I was just kind of like, I don't know, that doesn't really do anything for me. But I mean, the song itself is so killer.
But I think but I think it also goes back to, like summing up. In a sense, you could say it sums up what Good Riddance does. Like we talked about in a lot of their songs, just like singing about that community that they build. Like,
that's true.
So they're singing about a scene, but at the same time, not just like looking past things because, oh, you're a part of that scene, you're a part of our community, right? Like basically saying like, oh yeah, you get what we're doing musically, that's cool, you can be an asshole if you want, right? Like they're saying, no, that's not cool. Like you need to be kept. I think it fits. So I'll support that. Salt is the first. The problem is we got to figure out if we go back to bands we've already covered or if we wait till we actually cover them in the new format in the future and then we add songs. I think that's probably what we'll have to do. That's what happens when we change things up. But so that's going to wrap up Good Riddance. But before we go anywhere, you got to pick what we're doing next. Because I said I think Good Riddance was my pick. It might not have been actually. And we may have actually. I think we picked it together. Pennywise was my pick, and that was the last band that we covered. And then when we made the change of format, we were like, let's do Good Riddance, and then so the pick is on you. Yeah.
So I mean, with the Good Riddance, I mean, obviously both influenced by them, so we're not going to fight about who picked,
right?
But, so you messaged this week just saying, maybe again talking about just switching formats, whatever formats out the window. This is our show; we do what we want. But just about talking about an older band, but also maybe a newer one that maybe had a similar style or we felt was influenced by them. And at first, I didn't have any like bands that really came to mind, and so I didn't really know how I felt about that. I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. But then today, when we were talking about what bands to pick, it just immediately popped into my mind. You forced me because I said, "Oh, I don't know who to pick," and you said, whatever first band comes to mind." So that band was No Use for a Name, specifically the album More Betterness. And then a newer band, I mean, they've also been around a while, not as long as No Use for a Name, but a band called the Swellers, who, if I remember correctly, specifically stated that it was bands like No Use for a Name that inspired them. And they have a killer album called Good For Me. And so, we're gonna check out those ones and kind of see how they correlate and pinpoint some of the influence on it.
I'm interested to see how it goes because No Use for a Name is a band that I was always aware of outside of potentially like hearing a song or two on mixtapes or on samplers or whatever compilations. I couldn't pick them out of a crowd. So I'm interested to check that out. The Swellers, they are a band that specific album I had listened to at some point. I feel like maybe like Bandcamp or something. I saw them on there. So like I came across them somewhere. I was like, oh, these guys are pretty rad. So, but I haven't listened to them extensively. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Yeah, we kind of talked briefly about like going, oh, well, do we open it up to a little bit to more than just like, because so far, outside of like our best of sort of stuff, like, our year-end episode of stuff, it's been like 90s punk bands, right? Like bands that established themselves in the 90s. And I thought, do we open that up at all? Because like there are other bands that I loved that came along after that. There are bands today that I love. And then so that's when we started talking about maybe opening it up in a way to some newer music. And I think this is a great way to go, oh, because I couldn't go, hey, you picked No Use for a Name. This is the album I suggest for No Use for a Name. Unless I was just like drawing them out of a hat,
right.
I'd have no real way of picking that. So I like this idea of going, let's see, a band that is influenced by this band. So, I think that'll be pretty sweet. So that's what's coming up next. The next time we get together, we do have some things on the way, more interviews. I've got some ideas for like episodes that'll be done kind of differently. We're gonna maintain the weekly release schedule as long as we can. We only record once every 2 weeks, so unless we start like doing marathon recording sessions every 2 weeks, we got to find other ways to come up with content. You've been digging up interviews left, right, and center, so that's awesome. That's what's going to keep coming. And like I said, I've got different like either reviews or ideas for things on the way as well. But before we get out of here, let's do the important social media stuff. Of course, as always, you can follow us on Twitter at Growing Punk Pod, on Instagram at Growing Up Punk. I am on Instagram and Twitter at David Growing Up. And you, sir?
I am on Instagram of as Aaron Grew Up Punk. So, check it out if you like me posting about this and smoked meat and
it's just all else. About barbecue and punk rock. It's really the life. You're living the dream life.
But
you were barbecuing at Christmas.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing.
Was it cold at all? It wasn't cold here.
No, it was pretty mild then. So, it worked out good.
That's awesome. But yeah, so that'll do it, of course, wherever you're listening to the show. If you're listening to it on YouTube, shame on you. Not actually shame on you, but if you listen to it on your favorite podcast app, you'll actually get music in the show. Not just awkward transitions to music. Like in your interview with Ryan from Off the Record, I did like a thing at the beginning. I'm like, but first, before the interview, let's listen to Off the Record. Let's refresh our memories. But of course, on YouTube, that's not there. It just goes straight to the interview because I had to cut the music out. I'm like, no.
Wow.
So if you want the full experience, and trust me, it is a full experience. If assuming you like music, listen to us on your favorite podcast app, rate us, review us, all that kind of stuff. Of course, YouTube's great because you can also comment and we can talk that way. But
that's true.
You can literally find us wherever you find podcasts. So with that said, thanks for listening and adios.
See ya.
Where the hell did that come from? What's going on here?
Looks like a stage is being erected.